A lot of stuff going on. There is, I put together a summary page, Prop 63, as well as the other stuff that the governor signed in July. Not as the complete list of everything that's going on in the state or what's been done to us, but probably the most pertinent ones. There's a lot of stuff. You will probably have a lot of questions for Mr. Kilmer. I'm going to encourage you very strongly. The questions you should be asking would be things like, I know this guy who. I have this friend who told me.
Well,
Okay? And remember, there are severe limits on what he can and cannot say. But once again, we're going to get a lot of information. Yes, sir.
I would assume the most important question is, when I wake up from my drunken stupor January 1st, what do I have to deal
Yeah,
with?
well, what do we have to take care of?
July's a long way off, but January's getting real
There
big.
we go. Please give a warm welcome to a warrior in the Second Amendment community. I don't know how to say it. This man's been fighting the battle for a lot of years, a lot of frustrating battles, a few really big wins. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Don Kilmer.
Don, to be fair, you should have had a better introduction. Don Kilmer is the first lawyer in the country to get incorporation of the Second Amendment. Don Kilmer was the first lawyer in the country to get incorporation. The McDonald case in Chicago happened after he got it in the 9th District. He got the Supreme Court, or well, his case was the one where the 9th District said that you do have an individual right.
Mike, you're too kind. You're too kind. Don Cates was my co-counsel in that case.
I understand.
All right. So what I'd like to start with tonight is an announcement that saddens me. Don Cates passed away recently, actually about 10 days ago. I think he passed away on November 1st or November 2nd. I was up at the funeral in Battleground, Washington. Had to fly into Portland Saturday. I think it was the Saturday before the election. What I would like to do, Don was not a religious man, and that's putting it mildly. But I don't think that it is a dishonor to his memory to just go ahead and ask for a moment of silence in his memory. All right, thanks. I don't know if that was a full minute or not, but I would like to say a few words about him. I met Don Cates through the phone. I started my law career doing Second Amendment work, and one day I got a telephone call from somebody identifying themselves as Don Cates. Well, I knew who the name was because I had read his seminal article. In fact, it's probably the genesis of the reason we're all here, the Michigan Law Review article on firearm prohibition and the Second Amendment. It was the very first law review article published in this country that took the Second Amendment seriously. After that, other academics, such as Professor Levinson in Texas, published an article called The Embarrassing Second Amendment. This was a professor who did not like the Second Amendment or the rights enshrined in it, but said Mr. Cates' research on the original meaning of the Second Amendment is spot on, and it's time to recognize the right for what it is. Of course, Levinson advocates repealing it, but he has to admit that as written, it is an enforceable right. Anyway, I got this phone call from from Don Cates, and some of you here have heard him speak. He's a very colorful character. And after he finished telling me everything I was doing wrong, he invited to help me with the litigation I was working on. So he became my mentor. Whether or not I have fulfilled the role of protege or not, I'll leave to other people to decide. He was important because, A, his personal style, he was absolutely fearless. He was an academic in the true sense of the word. Once he was convinced that he was correct, he would stand against any odds. He would forego lucrative legal positions. He would forego lucrative business associations because of his position, of the stand that he took. One funny story about Don. It became important in our case, in the Nordite case, when we were talking about incorporation and the 14th Amendment and how the 14th Amendment makes the Bill of Rights applicable to the states and not just the federal government. I had a passage in one of my arguments where I brought up the Civil War. Now later on we'll talk about how wonderful the Electoral College is. The Electoral College exists because we're one country with one constitution and one Bill of Rights, but we are in fact many cultures. Well, I was raised in the South, and as you might imagine, growing up and learning about the Civil War, we called it the war between the states. There were others who actually called it the War of Northern Aggression, but we won't talk about them. Referred to the Civil War as the war between the states in this passage. And I had a very, very funny conversation with Don about that. He started out asking me, why did I choose that phrase? I explained to him, that's what it's always called. And he explained to me that style and syntax matter in legal briefs. And he told me about the background of our judge, and told me about the background of the liberal Bay Area, and he explained to me that if I didn't call it the Civil War instead of the war between the states, he wanted to be off the brief. That's how peculiar and how precise he wanted to be in his cases. There was some very colorful language thrown in with that criticism, which I will leave for another time. Anyway, he'll be missed. Okay. So as Don Cates was making his exit from the planet, Mr. Donald Trump was making his entrance as the President of the United States of America. I oftentimes have to speak to people who disagree with me, and tonight will be no different. I'm not a fan of Mr. Trump. I did not vote for him. I voted for the candidate that the Libertarians put up this time. Go ahead, get out of your system. Go ahead, boo. Let's hear it. Am I happy that she's not president? Yes, I am. Okay. Is there a silver lining to Mr. Trump being elected? There certainly is, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Look, in the final analysis, it doesn't matter who you rooted for or who you didn't root for. Okay, our country has to succeed or fall based upon its owner's manual and our faithfulness to the owner's manual. That owner's manual is the United States Constitution, which is more important than any single candidate, than any single party, or any single set of platforms or ideas. And by the way, we should congratulate the two people responsible for the most gun sales in the last decade. Let's see if we can improve upon that record over the next decade. So keep buying and selling and engaging in commerce and firearms. Look, Donald Trump is not disqualified from being president, no matter what any of your liberal friends tell you. The qualifications for being president of the United States are in Article 2 of the Constitution, and Mr. Trump clearly meets those requirements. Now, he might not have been my candidate, but the beauty of the way our system runs is that when the people have spoken, that's the rule. Of course, the Electoral College will confirm the vote in December. Let's look at the pros and cons of a Trump presidency. The bad news is, Mr. Trump is not a constitutionalist. Now, we can hope that he surrounds himself with constitutionalists, and it looks like he's doing that. Okay, he has only a recent affection for limited government that our Constitution contains, so we should remain suspicious. He's a little bit too cozy with the idea of eminent domain. His conversion to Second Amendment, principles is very recent, although my understanding is that his sons probably would be attending this meeting if they lived in San Jose, so that would be a big help. Mr. Trump has said some disturbing things about the First Amendment, too, although I think that those are probably much more of a long shot than anything else he has in mind. But here's the thing. Mr. Trump is entitled to no less oversight on his government than any other president. No more, no less. No politician should escape our skepticism, our scrutiny, and our oversight of what it is they do when it affects our freedoms and when it affects our rights under our Constitution. Nobody does. One of the truths that have been revealed over the past, time period is that the mainstream media turns a blind eye when their guy is in the White House. Okay, that rule needs to stop. Okay, everybody who occupies a position of power should perform their duties under the same transparency and under the same light, and as anybody, regardless of what party you belong to. So what I would like to see happen is that Mr. Trump be given, if not the benefit of the doubt, at least an even shake going forward. And even for people who did not vote for him, but who are grateful that he became president, I think we owe it to give him that even shot. The good news, and probably I'm speaking with a personal bias here because it goes to my livelihood, is that Mr. Trump will be making Supreme Court appointments and not Hillary Clinton. Mr. Trump published a list of judges he's likely to choose from if he is authorized to make an appointment. Being that the United States Senate successfully stopped the appointment or the seating of Merrick Garland, that means Mr. Trump will have one appointment upon entering office. And that's the seat vacated by Justice Scalia in February this year with his passing. My personal favorite is Justice Don Willett of the Texas Supreme Court. But the list that Mr. Trump put out has very, very good candidates on it. Do a little bit of Google searching out there, and there are some websites that catalog these judges, and they publish the opinions that they've written as either a state Supreme Court judge or a circuit judge. I encourage you to read those. Another favorite at the top of the list is Judge Sykes out of the 7th Circuit. She wrote the majority opinion in the Ezell versus City of Chicago case, finding that there was a fundamental right to open a firing range, especially when the state requires you to have, demonstrate proficiency in firing a gun. That case out of Chicago. So we should make sure that we hold Mr. Trump to his list. And while I'm cautiously optimistic about Mr. Trump's presidency, I have to tell you that I am pessimistically cautious about what's happening here in California. The joke I've been telling people is that California went so far left in this election that I think that the tour boat for Alcatraz now can make a stop in Honolulu. Some bad things happened on the statewide ballots this November in California. I don't know if it's a good thing that Kamala Harris is going to be in the U.S. Senate instead of our Attorney General. That's probably marginally better for us, but bad for the country. More disturbing is when you took a look at your ballot. I'm sure some of you noticed that there were oftentimes two races, or there were races with candidates where both candidates were from the Democratic Party. How did this happen in this state?
Top two.
How is there not? How is it that the California Republican Party isn't suing the Secretary of State or taking some legal action to find out how it is that their candidates can't even get on a general ballot?
Lack of leadership.
You may be right.
Initiative in 2010 went to top two.
In any case, Prop 63 won by close to a 2/3 majority. And that tells us two things. It tells us that the people in this state don't even know what gun laws they already have, because the legislature already passed nearly identical laws this year, and it was signed into law by the governor. What that means is people still view the gun issue as an emotional issue. They look at it, they don't study it, they don't read up on it, they don't research it, they listen to the pablum that they're given by the mainstream media, and then they vote. The culture of restricting rights has firmly taken root in our state, and that sickness is close to becoming irreversible. That's my honest assessment. But the rot goes deeper in California. We approved statewide bans on grocery bags. We kept the death penalty. We added additional burdens to future generations through taxes. We passed rent control. And we burdened businesses with additional regulations and taxes. The only bright spot is we decriminalized weed. And not that that's an endorsement of getting high, although it's perfectly understandable to want to get high in this state. At least it will scale back the violations of the Fourth Amendment search and seizure that the drug war has been used as a pretext to violate. Here's my takeaway from the election. We're getting ready to enter the holiday season. You folks are going to be sitting around the tables and enjoying time with family and friends, many of whom, based upon the statistics from the election, probably didn't vote the same way you did. Otherwise, they might be here tonight with you. I'm going to ask you to take this opportunity to discuss philosophy instead of polls. Talk to your friends and relatives about constitutionally limited government. The whole structure of our Constitution is about limitations on power. The first article of the Constitution sets out the powers of Congress. It's the most detailed portion of the Constitution, and we should insist that our Congress sticks to that list and not stray outside of it. And guess what? Healthcare ain't in there. Article 2 deals with the powers of the president. Article 3 deals with the judiciary. Of course, there are other articles. I encourage you to pick up one of these Cato Institute books up here and read through it if you're curious. The Bill of Rights is our menu of things that the government may never do, even as we witness the erosion of the things that they may never do. Okay, your liberal friends will want to limit Donald Trump's efforts to change America. That's understandable. That's their philosophy. Remind them that the constitutional limits are not dependent upon whether your guy's in the White House or not. We have a unique opportunity now to remind people that it doesn't matter who's in the White House. The thing that impressed me the most about this past election, being kind of an outsider libertarian type, is how much this really mattered to the people who had a dog in this race. I watched friendships of decades break up over this election. I watched people who were normally friendly, cordial, courteous, and kind to each other on any other topic get in screaming matches when they talked about this race. And the reason for that? The reason for that is because we allow our politicians to put our rights up for auction every election, and then it goes to the highest bidder, whoever gets the most votes. This woman wanted to eviscerate 1/10 of the Bill of Rights. She said Heller was wrongly decided. If Heller was wrongly decided, that means... If Heller was wrongly decided, everybody in here would have to be a member of a militia in order to have the right to keep and bear arms, which means you don't have a fundamental individual right. That's 1/10 of the Bill of Rights gone. Mr. Trump is not necessarily all that good on some other fundamental rights in our Bill of Rights. He's a big fan of eminent domain and taking people's property away from them so he can build casinos and parking garages. The Fifth Amendment says that private property shall not be taken for public use without just compensation. He kind of skips over that part where it says private property for public use. That usually means a bridge or a hospital or a road. It doesn't mean a casino. We have to quit letting our politicians put our rights up for auction at every election and turning us against each other. Use your opportunity this holiday season when you're talking about the election with your friends. Don't, instead of rubbing their nose in it, as satisfying as that will be, talk to them about limited government. People ask me sometimes when they find out that I'm a quote-unquote gun nut, or that I'm a lawyer for the gun culture, oh, you're a single-issue voter. Well, what does that mean? Oh yeah, you just vote depending upon what gun rights are at stake. No. You're right, I am a single-issue voter. That single issue is the U.S. Constitution. And whether or not the politician that I'm going to cast a vote for understands it, and has demonstrated that understanding, and is willing to be bound by it, that's the single issue that we should be voting on in every future election. Whether or not our Constitution remains the law of the land, regardless of what your personal policy preferences are.
Right on.
We need to relearn what government power is. The people in this room have a unique understanding of that. We've all fired weapons. We all know what those weapons will do to human and animal flesh, or paper targets. That is the power of government. The government's power always comes down to the power to kill, the power to imprison, the power to confiscate property, the power to tax, the power to intimidate through regulation. We have lost sight of this because we think government is about health care and old age pensions and racial equality and gender equality and economic regulation and clean air and clean water. Whatever your particular views on these topics are, and I don't really care what they are, remember, it takes somebody with a gun to enforce that policy. So we should be looking to limit that power and make sure that it has proper oversight. I'm not here to pitch any particular party. I have gone back and forth between voting for libertarian candidates and Republican candidates my entire adult life since I've been allowed to vote, or been permitted to vote, or exercise my right to vote, however you want to look at that. The point is that I always went for the candidate who at least seemed to understand the Constitution and understand the limits on government power. And that's really what we have to, what we need to take from this election going forward. We dodged a bullet a week and a half ago, a big bullet. But we also walked into a minefield and we don't know where all the mines are. So we need to tread carefully. We need to impose the proper oversight on everybody who takes power. Not just the GOP if you're a Dem, and not just the Dem if you're a GOP. The truth is, power corrupts. There's something that happens to people when they pick up and move into that beltway, into that area. In fact, one of the better pieces of news that I heard was that Mr. Trump doesn't intend to spend a lot of time in Washington, D.C. Good for him. Donald Trump is my president, and I hope he does well, and I will do everything I can to assist him. And that's all I got to say about the election. So, happy to open the floor to questions about gun-specific issues. Mark is absolutely correct. Do not begin the question with, hey, I got this old gun. I'm somewhat limited on my ability to tell you about what you can and can't do, mostly because of one of the cases that we lost this year. One of the cases we lost was Haney versus Harris. Haney was a case that arose based on the bullet button. So here was a new technology that basically revitalized the AR platform as a viable rifle here in California. And although several people wrote letters and requests to the Department of Justice asking them, does this make the gun legal? Is this okay? Are you going to issue regulations about this? The Department of Justice basically ignored those letters, or they'd issue some cute little half denial, half affirmance saying, well, it's probably legal, but 58 district attorneys might disagree with us and they're entitled to interpret the law their own way. Except for the fact that the fucking statute says it's your job to interpret the regulation, lady. Well, we took them to court on that issue and says they were required to issue either an up or down on whether the bullet button made AR platform legal or not. Well, we lost that. So that's the problem we're at right now. Your government can issue, the state government of California can issue vague and ambiguous rules and regulations and statutes. And then when their citizens make an honest request for clarification on the regulation, the AG can say, we're going to decline to answer that question. So, I don't have the ability to tell you as a lawyer whether your particular gun is legal or not, or whether this new technology is legal or not. On an individualized basis, I can probably give you that advice. So if you can catch me at the gun range, show me your toy, and I'll tell you whether it's legal or not. And if you can prove that you're a member of this group, I'll do it for free. On standard capacity magazines, what is known to the anti-gunners and the stupid people as high capacity magazines, my suggestion is that you do not have in your possession anything that does hold more than 10 rounds. Either ship them out of state or make sure whatever you have is permanently altered so it can't handle more than 10 rounds. With regard to the silliness of what is and is not a semi-automatic centerfire rifle with a detachable magazine or not, I know there are many devices out there, many reconfigurations that people are selling. Some of them look fine to me, some of them don't look fine. I don't know unless I see it, and unless I do some research on it. I know that when I have written letters myself to the Department of Justice asking for clarification, the letters go unanswered. See, this is the point of these complex regulations. They aren't for public safety. They aren't to make sure that you can't shoot up a schoolyard. They aren't there to make sure that you don't hurt yourself. They're there to make you afraid to exercise your rights because you don't know whether or not what you're doing is legal or illegal. And when you... And I suspect there's a high degree of people in this room who just say, fuck it, I'm buying my gun anyway, okay? But there are a lot of people out there, fellow travelers, who when they're deciding on how to spend their leisure dollars, and they're looking at either buying a ski boat, or buying some fishing gear, or a surfboard, or a kite surfing outfit, or getting into shooting, and they figure out that, there's absolutely no penalty for me to catch the wrong wave at Santa Cruz. So I guess but you know, if I buy the wrong gun or buy the wrong bullet, or buy the wrong bullet on the wrong day, I'm going to prison. Well, guess where they're going to spend their leisure dollars? And then we lose members, we lose fellow travelers, we lose other civil rights workers. So that's the point of these regulations. Hang on a second. I'll finish up some general thoughts and then I'll take specific questions. Let's see. There was one other issue I wanted to... Oh, right. One last general point. I am seeing a higher frequency in my office of what I call trial balloon prosecutions. People who get arrested on a marginal charge. Once I explain to the district attorney what's going on here, I can either get the case, I can either get them not to file, or I can get them to immediately dismiss the case. What that tells me is not that the police are stupid, but that the district attorneys are malicious. What that tells me is that the anti-gunners plan is working. They are making the laws so ambiguous that people are getting caught up who are not, there is no criminal intent. The problem is at that point in time, the process becomes the punishment. When you have to pay somebody like me $20, $30, $40, in some cases as high as $75,000 or $80,000 for a full trial in order to get acquitted of a charge on a highly technical reading of a gun law, they have succeeded in diminishing your rights without banning anything. So, don't be a test case. Yes, I'm telling you that when you go to the range, in order to stay safe, because yeah, shooting is a perishable skill, you should stay sharp. You should probably go ahead and stick to your cowboy action guns for now. At least until we can get this sorted out on ARs and detachable magazines and ammo bans. One of the things that I can tell you, whether it's me or the new crop of gun lawyers that are coming up, and yes, there are some, I'm helping train some of them. There will be challenges, and if we can get the right Supreme Court appointments, we can solidify Heller and McDonald and make sure that the Second Amendment is as safe as the First Amendment. Thank you. But for now, play it safe, folks. Okay? Don't call me and say, I had this whiz-bang Rube Goldberg machine contraption, Don, can you get me off? I might be able to, okay? But, you know, you're going to have to pay the research and development somewhere, and I would rather you kept it for your kids' college education instead of paying for my RV. All right, I'm going to go from left to right.
Your left.
And
Stage right.
my left, your right.
Stage left.
And I'll keep going until there aren't any more questions, because I don't think we give a shit anymore, do we, about time? Good. All right, I'm yours. Ask away.
Two immediate action things that concern me. One is these laws that passed, both the state legislative laws and the Prop 63, which start in January. That's a pretty obvious question. The second one is that in the public campaign to pass 63, almost all law enforcement groups opposed it. However, and I sent you guys that video, the link to it was an hour long. The district attorney in this county, who's been here and seen friendly, took the most obtuse, more extreme than nuisance position in a number of public debates. I am concerned. So we talk about these test cases. The guy's been here before. He absolutely destroyed us in those. He did a what do you call it? A debate with Sean Brady. And Sean's tack was to talk about some stuff that was already law rather than address the errors. But this guy was out and out BSing us. And I'm extremely concerned because on the whole state, the only 5 DAs that did it were San Mateo, Santa Clara, San Francisco, Alameda, and Contra Costa. Those 5 DAs went against us and our rights in the most despicable manner I've ever seen in a debate. And the guy's completely untrustworthy. I would never have him here again, and it's my intent to see to it he does not get reelected. I'm going to make a point of that. But I'm extremely concerned that if he took that tack, do you think he will follow it through in changing the way he handles the enforcement? Because he really became rat number one.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, see, this is the problem with vague and ambiguous laws, is that there's a great website or Twitter feed that you can subscribe to called, I don't know, I think it's called 3 Felonies a Day or something like that. And where there's just one Twitter feed that it publishes once a day some absurd federal law, like it's illegal to transport peanut butter that's not 20% Brazil nut or something across the Georgia state line or some bullshit like that. Okay, but folks, this is what I'm talking about when you talk about we can get down into the weeds on whether you should have 10 bullets or 11 bullets or 12 bullets in your gun, and that's not the argument you want to have. The argument you want to have is show me where the government has the power to regulate this.
Yes.
Okay, the Constitution doesn't give you that power. The Bill of Rights specifically says you don't have that power. It is time for us to start insisting on our rights and not being afraid of it. I know that's preaching to the choir in this room. You people come out of your homes on a Thursday night and you're here, okay? But how many of your friends out there are embarrassed to say they own guns? They own guns. They love guns. But they're embarrassed to say it.
But I asked,
what was this election about? This election was about people who voted for Trump who were afraid to say they were going to vote for Trump.
Right on. We're the dark matter. You can't see it from over here.
So as far as a DA who makes charging decisions based upon his personal political philosophy, I don't have an answer for you other than to vote the son of a bitch out. Okay? Look, you know,
but I mean,
until our criminal justice system is reformed, where people who are found not guilty, or maybe even people who are found innocent of the crime, get to punish the charging authority by getting their attorney's fees and costs reimbursed, which is, there's something that you should advocate for. If a district attorney makes a charging decision that results in somebody having to put up their house, and they walk because the jury says no crime here, well, maybe they should get that money back.
Loser pays.
Because otherwise the presumption of innocence means nothing.
Right.
If you were innocent, but now you're $100,000 poorer. Okay, I'm going to keep going left to right. Yes, Declan.
I'm going to follow your advice and not ask you about what to do with guns we may or may not.
You mean the line I lent to you?
There's
We're okay. It's not January 1st yet.
not January 1st yet. The question is, what do we need to do to future-proof our own rights or our children's rights before December 31st? Like, basically, what do we need to buy at the gun stores when we go to buy?
I'm making a few purchases before the end of the year of off-list lowers, and I'm going to be putting together some rifles that, of course, I don't have any children to pass them on to. Maybe my cat will learn how to use one. But I guess the thing to do is to go ahead and look at the list of things that you can. Of course, the problem is that you can't rush out and buy standard capacity magazines because they're going to be illegal. They're legal now to buy. The problem with the standard capacity magazine ban is it is making property already owned illegal, and that's why it's open to either a takings challenge or some other kind of due process challenge. You can never go wrong buying ammo. I've placed an order for ammunition to be drop shipped to my house. Other than that, I don't really know that there's something you should run out and buy.
About the legality of relocating them for a while until this is over.
Well, okay, I'll disclose. I am moving some of my personal property, which shall remain unnamed, to a different location. Okay, that is not within this state. Hopefully I can recover it and bring it back here once the insanity stops. But other than that, I refuse to give up. I mean, folks, some of this stuff isn't just utilitarian. Some of us, when I went through boot camp, that's the rifle I fucking shot. Okay, I know how it works. I know what its components are. I know how to swap the magazine out. I don't want to have to learn a new rifle. When? Where's my fucking diaper pin? They give us a fucking diaper pin when they took our rights away. So,
Millennials have it.
yeah.
You know where that came from?
I'm happy to answer any particularized questions on a one-on-one basis, but other than you can never go wrong buying ammo, so buy ammo. Yes, sir.
Is there currently any suits being brought against 63 or other laws that were passed to prevent them?
I know that there are plans to bring lawsuits after we see what the Supreme Court appointments look like. Some of the people on Mr. Trump's list have no track record on the Second Amendment. It's not that they're necessarily bad on it, it's that they have no track record on it. They haven't had a Second Amendment case to write an opinion on. And never, ever, ever, ever forget that the same president who gave us Justice Thomas, who in my humble opinion is the greatest justice to sit on the modern court, bar none, I think he's better than Scalia personally. Okay? The same president who appointed Justice Thomas also appointed Justice Souter. And that's the crapshoot of picking Supreme Court justices sometimes. So we need to wait and see. But yes, there are plans to bring challenges to all or some of this nonsense. So, sorry I can't be more specific than that because we don't discuss litigation strategy in public. Yes.
Yeah, the Northern Marinara Islands, I know it was a district court ruling about a month or two ago, a massive ruling where the judge invalidated the assault weapons ban, magazine ban, man open carry. I know it's a district ruling. Do you know, have you heard whether or not Northern Marinara is going to actually appeal that up to the Ninth Circuit?
I don't know. I know the lawyer handling that case, but I'm not in contact with him every day. See, part of what happened in gun litigation was this. When Justice Scalia passed away, the court went to 4-4. And if the court takes a case and decides at 4-4, it's a tie. If it's a tie, that means the circuit court ruling stands. Well, that's okay if you're in the Fifth Circuit, and the Fifth Circuit, struck down a stupid gun law, because the 4-4 tie means the law stays struck down. But if you're coming out of the Ninth Circuit, that means a Ninth Circuit decision also stands. That's why it was very, very risky to want to appeal, or at least petition the U.S. Supreme Court for certiorari in the Peruta case. Now, it's my understanding that a request for an extension of time has been granted to the NRA's lawyers in the Peruta case, and Alan and I have not made up our minds yet whether we're going to tag along with that in the Richards case. But it looks like there will be a petition for cert, at least prepared, for the U.S. Supreme Court to see what's going to happen on the off chance that we get a good justice on the U.S. Supreme Court. Probably what happened in the Ninth Circuit is once Justice Scalia died, it was, it was kind of the Supreme Court doesn't take every case it's appealed to it, obviously. First of all, most cases are granted a petition for certiorari. Your right to an appeal is different with the U.S. Supreme Court. And so oftentimes what the court does is the court actually acts like what I call an anvil, okay, whereas the circuit courts and the litigation that happens in the lower courts is the hammer. Okay, so we hit an issue, okay, knowing that the Supreme Court has our back and that the circuit courts are going to rule the way they think the Supreme Court might rule. Of course, the only exception to that among all the circuits is the fucking Ninth Circuit, who thinks they are an entity unto themselves and pretty much do what they want to do. In any case, once we have that backstop of a U.S. Supreme Court that is likely to uphold the ruling in Heller and McDonald, a lot of cases won't get decided the way that they are. For instance, one of the cases that my office won this year was the Tixeria case, which stands for the right that the proposition that municipalities and counties can't redline or use zoning regulations to stop gun stores from opening. They can't treat a gun store different than, say, a shoe store or 7-Eleven or something like that, okay?
No more circles?
Now, the county has asked for en banc review on that, and we filed the briefs on that. We opposed it back in September, so we're waiting to see what the Ninth Circuit is going to do with that. If they grant the petition for en banc review, that means that there's probably a majority of justices that want to reverse. That'd be a bad thing. But then, if the Supreme Court stayed 4-4, or this saleswoman of guns got elected, then the case would have been dead. There's no way we appeal. Now, we have that backstop. Okay, it's sort of like, it's like you're on a playground or something like that, and Johnny wants to take away the swing before you're allowed to have your turn on it, and you know that the teacher's got your back. Well, Johnny's usually persuaded to let you have your turn on the swing at that point. Now, can I get my pin? Can I get my diaper pin? All right, yes, in the back.
Actually, a statement. 2 people that I asked who voted for Proposition 63 said, I don't know, maybe it will help. And that's why they voted for it.
Did you tell them that the legislature already passed the identical law?
No, that will require closing my mouth.
Oh. All right, well, I mean, the war that we're fighting here, folks, and you've heard me say this until I'm blue in the face and you're blue in the ears, is we're fighting a demographic war, okay? This meeting of people is probably, I don't want to say it's unique in California. I know that there are people like this meeting in San Diego and down in Los Angeles area and what have you. But honestly, people who live in Shasta County and Trinity County, I was just up on a camping trip in Nevada City, which I think is Amador County, if I'm not mistaken. No, it might be Nevada County. They are openly defiant of state laws with regard to guns. They don't give a shit, okay? They just do what they want to, all right? And they do it with a wink and a nod from local law enforcement who doesn't see the utility of these guns either,
Right.
okay? So we're kind of in a unique placement here in that there's enough of us in an urban blue area who still understand the utility and the importance of the right to keep and bear arms, but there are a lot of people out there who are persuadable, okay? They haven't drank the Kool-Aid, who could be our allies if they understood the issues, which means the other thing I want you to do, that I said, talk to your relatives and neighbors about political philosophy instead of polls, take somebody shooting, preferably somebody who's never held a gun before in their life. And don't give them the 44 Magnum to start with.
Why not?
Give them the most accurate gun in your cabinet, because nothing brings a smile to their face than when they walk out to that target or pull it off the line and they have a bullseye. You will have created a gun owner and a Second Amendment advocate by doing that simple thing, and guess what? It's fun.
Yes.
All right. Middle row here. Start in the front. Yes.
One question I've had for a very long time, maybe you can help me with this, is how can California law that allows local sheriffs to determine whether you can exercise your Second Amendment rights or not be constitutional?
Because you have to enforce it in court.
Well, are you asking me a political question or a legal question? The fact is that the way our current system is set up is that the national government only has certain powers. State governments have presumably plenary power to regulate for health and safety. The state government makes up out of thin air this idea that in order to protect public safety, people shouldn't have guns on them in public. And if the state had its way, they would say you can't have a gun in private either. I mean, California is one of 5 states that does not have a state analog to the right to keep and bear arms. There is no, if the Second Amendment goes away, if you live in Arizona, you have a state constitution that says you have a right to keep and bear arms. And then you're in state court, or you're going to the state Supreme Court on that issue. In California, you don't have the right at all if the Second Amendment is nullified. So that's where the state of California gets its power to say, we can regulate this activity. And make no mistake, they will regulate it out of existence if they can over the coming generations. That is their goal. Hope that answers your question.
It did not.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Well, if you have a constitution that says you have the right to keep and bear arms, how can the state then just nullify that?
How did the state gather people of Japanese ancestry after when World War II started and move them to camps in Manzanar? How did the state declare that a black man can't marry a white woman? How did this country at one time endorse, support, and defend slavery? Governments do bad things, and that's why we have to limit their power. All right. I know that's probably still not a satisfactory answer, but they're wrong for doing it.
Thank you.
If you want my endorsement. Yes, sir.
So I realize we're talking about the big picture here, and down the road a bit, but yourself, your colleagues, the rest of us, the Article 5 of the Constitution, there's power there where we can make a lot of changes, including the ones we're talking about here tonight. So, what do you think?
I think the foremost spokesman for an Article 5 convention of the states is Mark Levin. I think he's written an entire book about it, and I think there's a lot of merit to that argument. And I think it should be I think that serious people should take an honest, hard look at it. And I hope that if it happens, this would be a pipe dream, but I doubt it would happen. I doubt the state of California would select me as one of its delegates. Okay? If California had to be dragged kicking and screaming into a convention of states, they're not likely to send me as one of their delegates. But one of the things that we do have going for us, and I think this strengthens Mr. Levin's argument, is when you take a look at the Electoral College map, okay, the reason we have the Electoral College is because it is mandatory for the ascension of the President of the United States in this country to talk to everybody, not just people in Los Angeles or New York or Philadelphia or Seattle. You have to talk to everybody, and that includes the people of Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. People who have been ignored in the past. And by the way, trust me, I'm from that area of the country. I was raised in the South, but I was actually born in Western New York. That is NRA country. So, Convention of the States, yeah, thumbs up from me. All right, going back farther, yes.
Question. Purchase made an AR-15 rifle post-1114. That gun is supposedly now registered. How can they get away with charging me to register it again?
It's called hostage and ransom. Yeah, if I get the case of somebody who bought a rifle, an AR pattern rifle post January 1, 2014, and they're charged with being in possession of an unregistered assault weapon because their thinking is, well, I did register it, okay? That's what happened January 1, 2014. All rifles and shotguns were registered in addition to handguns. Do I get to make that argument to the jury? Might a jury acquit you? Yeah, maybe. Do you want to pay the $20 insurance to get out of jail free card and go ahead and register it? That would be my advice. What's the hell's the point? They already know you have it. So pay the ransom. Yes.
Couple things. You mentioned earlier buy ammo. For anyone who hasn't started doing that, do it before the end of the year. AmmoSeek.com. You can list over 30 vendors at the lowest prices on that day.
Okay.
Done. You address gun trusts, and do they help with passing your firearms on to errors, or are they useless in California?
In my opinion, they are useless in California. That's all I can tell you. I researched the gun trust issue, and there are reasons for doing it, and California has managed to negate all the good reasons for doing it. Now, and mind you, I'm talking about what I consider to be a standard collection. Let me back up a minute, because my standard collection might be called an arsenal. But if you've got a couple of shotguns, a couple of rifles, and a couple of handguns, A trust is probably not necessary. You can probably pass those things as a standard personal property, like your car or your Disney plate collection or whatever it is that you're going to give away when you die. But if you have, you know, Parker and Holland shotguns that are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and there may be tax implications of transferring this property, then you might want to seek some estate planning on something like that. So if you have a very, very large or valuable collection, then yeah, you might want to think about a trust, but it's not going to be a gun trust. It's not going to get you around any gun laws. What it'll do is it'll just be a method for transferring this valuable property upon you know, your demise or your death or whatever. You'll still have to comply with all of California's laws for transferring the firearms even to family members. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to know, there's certain things that have been said to be grandfathered in, and we thought they were safe, but now it doesn't seem like grandfathering in means anything to these people. What's the truth about that?
B. Nothing's grandfathered in.
It doesn't hold any weight at all.
Nope. Not in California. Sorry. Pat.
Two questions. Are we into a new regime now, a new iteration of assault weapon registration? There were a number of firearms historically, for example, the range rifles, which were excluded as assault weapons. Are we now at a stage where there are, by definition of functionality, are there additional requirements for registration of firearms? And secondly, you talked quite a bit earlier about the initiative process. Are we doomed forever? And what's your general take on the initiative process, whether it's good or bad? Sorry.
Yeah, okay. California's assault weapon statutes have gone through 3 evolutions. We're on our 4th evolution now. Initially, it was a list of bad guns. Okay? The analogy is red Ford F-150 trucks are illegal, but the blue ones are fine. All right? And so if you had a red Ford F-150, you had to register it. Otherwise, you were in possession of an illegal assault weapon. Then there was a change in the law, and they created a Category 2 assault weapon, which was the series weapons. And that was like saying if you had a Ford F-150 pickup truck that was a shade of red, it was illegal, but if it was blue, it was okay. And then the third iteration went into, okay, everything that has a truck bed and is self-propelling and 4 wheels, basically a truck, is an assault weapon. And then we kind of got around that by saying, well, does it have a closing bed or not? Okay, or is the tailgate open or off of the truck? And we use these cute little loopholes to get around having to register a rifle. And the latest iteration, the 4th generation assault weapon, is basically, nope, if it's a truck, it's an assault weapon. That's the simplest explanation I can give you. Basically, any semi-automatic centerfire rifle, and it doesn't, the detachable magazine no longer is a distinguishing characteristic, because that's what the bullet button solved. So now it's going to have to require a tool, an actual tool or disassembly of the gun to get to this, to get to the ammunition. We're getting into the weeds here on the technicalities here, but look, if you own any handgun that you bought from a dealer after 1995, the state of California knows that you have a gun. So get ready folks, on the list. All right? Now, I'm not a big fan of registration. I don't think that registration is unconstitutional, though. So I don't think there's any way to get around there being a registration or a registry of the fact that you own a gun. For those who believe that the Second Amendment includes an insurrectionist theory, that we have the right to alter or abolish our government, and by force if necessary, if the government fires or draws first blood, I believe that the way to make sure that that never happens is for 50% of the population to have registered guns. Because there's not enough police, and there's not enough military people to go out and confiscate them all at the same time, and that's what they'd have to do, is get us all at the same time. So I don't see the downside to registering if it's going to keep you from paying me $10,000 to get you out of trouble. Okay? So quit with the scare stories about registration. I don't think that's your real problem. Our real problem is them diminishing the right to where we're going to end up to where our children and grandchildren are going to be lucky if they have a single shot 22 that they have to keep locked at the gun range. That's the real danger. As far as initiatives have gotten out of control. There was a time when they were useful. There was a time when they had some utility. They are no longer used to protect our rights. They are now being used by people with a lot of money to take away our rights. So I'm thumbs down on initiatives for now. All right, I'm going to finish here, and then we're going to start on the left side and keep going again.
Follow up on, is there a site or some penal code section or DOJ area where I can go get some more detail? If someone I know has a range rifle or something else, find out if it needs to be registered and by when, etc.
Well, now you've hit upon the central issue that was brought up in the Haney case. We pointed out to the judges that were sitting there that the California Attorney General has a statutory duty to publish an assault weapons guide. The last time they published an assault weapons guide was 2001. They haven't updated it. And according to the questioning from the judges to the AG who was there, they had no plans to update it. So I guess the best half-assed answer to your question is look at the assault weapons guide that there is now and take a look at any laws passed since 2001 and see if your gun fits. Sorry, best I can do. You can call my office for an appointment, bring your gun down, we'll take a look at it. Yep, you, and then you.
So if a family member passes away and they are
registered or unregistered? Assault weapon or non-assault weapon?
non-assault rifle that was purchased after 2014 but before 2016. They have that, they pass away, and a family member keeps a rifle. They can come after it. How does that work? You're going to say you have 30 days to turn the rifle? How does that work?
All right, well, if the person has a registered assault weapon and the government learns that the person has died, and believe me, the government engages in these kind of data mining techniques all the time now, and they have nobody in the estate, or the administrator of the estate has not filed either proof of destruction or a proof of transfer, then yeah, theoretically they could knock on your door and say, hey, we have this registered assault weapon and this person's dead, where's the gun? And your response is?
Where's the load?
No, your response is? No, your response is, get the fuck off my property unless you have a warrant. And if you want to talk to me about this, you call my lawyer. Okay? Please, 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 if you take nothing else away from tonight, you take this away. All of your constitutional rights are there for a reason. Please, half the people who end up paying me money to get them out of trouble had a nice friendly chat with the police officer just before they put the cuffs on them. It is none of the government's business what is in your house or in your gun safe unless they have a warrant. Okay? Don't let them get away with that. Here, here, and then here. Yes, sir.
So, a practical aspect of all this, if you have high capacity, kind of capacity magazines, you have assault weapon that you don't want to register or whatever, is there someplace, a business, someplace across the border of Nevada or someplace that you can take and you can store your weapons, your magazines?
They're made by them.
My garage.
Well, here's the problem. If it's contraband in your house, it's also illegal to transport it to the state line.
Until after the January 1st, but before that, is there someplace that you can take it?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know of any businesses, and I don't endorse any businesses that do that. Sorry. Don't have any advice for you on that. Don't be caught in this state with an illegal weapon, regardless of the date. Okay, regardless of the charge. Yes, sir.
You mentioned Justice Scalia and his replacement. Hugh Hewitt the other day said Clarence Thomas was considering retiring. Now that's a rumor. Have you heard anything to that effect?
The only thing I know is that Justice Thomas has said that he does not want to die sitting on the court. As far as I know, he is a healthy 68-year-old man. And we hope he just remains that way. He's certainly not in that age where retirement is imminent. I'm not aware of him having any health issues. So no, I'm not aware of him retiring. I doubt that Clarence Thomas would retire if he believed that his retirement would jeopardize the rights that he's fought for himself all these years. So, and by the way, I hope he hangs around for at least another 10 years. I mean, honestly, folks, one of the rare exceptions to the absolute nightmare of reading judicial opinions. I mean, it's opaque language, it's difficult terms, and these assholes use Latin when they don't need to. One of the exceptions to that is Justice Thomas's opinions. They are a model of clarity and good writing. So I highly recommend that if you get a hold of them. Yes, sir.
You pointed out earlier we have this duality where there's going to be laws as a result of proposition that we're just duplicating legislation. The cases that you may be planning to attack the legislation don't attack the proposition of the situation, the amendment to the Constitution. So what happens if you're successful with overturning the legislation, but we're still stuck with the proposition result?
Then that would be an error of pleading because you should probably challenge them both.
Yeah.
If they're unconstitutional, it doesn't matter whether the people passed it in an initiative or whether it was passed by the legislature. We saw that, for instance, with Proposition 8. Proposition 8 was the proposition that defined marriages between one man and one woman, and that the court had no problem overturning that when they did so. All right. Yes, sir.
The current Attorney General is going after states like Arizona for enforcing the state version of the federal immigration laws. Do you see any likelihood that the future Attorney General will go after states like California for violating the civil rights of its own citizens?
Well, when people are bored and want to ask me my opinion on policy at a national level, one of the things I tell them is that I would like to see a Second Amendment division of the Office of the Attorney General modeled on the Voting Rights Division and the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice. Now, that's a pipe dream, but that would be something that a Trump administration could do, is say, you know, we're going to take a look at California and Massachusetts, by the way, and Chicago's laws here, because they're violating the rights of United States citizens with their state and local laws. That would be a very welcome change in policy. and use of, in my opinion, proper use of an Attorney General's oversight on state and local laws that violate fundamental rights.
Are there channels for that suggestion to make it to the right ears?
I'm sure.
I'm not, you know, I'm sure that there's some website somewhere, some petition you can sign. You know, it's like,
I mean, more, you know people who know people.
I publicly endorsed Gary Johnson. Trump is not going to ask me for any advice. All right. Yes, sir.
On the license that we have by ammunition, is there any guidance you're aware of by for purchase types of ammunition, number of different types of ammunition you buy?
I'd have to take a look at the exact language of the statute, and I don't know. My understanding is that it's going to be an instantaneous background check, which is real interesting because we just won a case out in Fresno that said the government was absolutely incapable of doing instantaneous background checks for guns. But now the legislature said we will do instantaneous background checks for ammunition, and they're going to use the exact same databases. So the government's talking out of both sides of its mouth there. With regard to whatever the restrictions are on the amount that you could purchase in any one time, I would just refer you to the statute, which I don't have in front of me right now. Okay. Yes, sir. In the back there, in the white shirt. Treasurer, I think you are, right?
Yes.
The money man. Show me the money.
So 2 questions. Question number 1. For those folks that have AR or AK pattern rifles with mag blocks or bullet button, should they now choose to register them as assault weapons? Can those mag blocks and bullet buttons come off?
Don't know.
Okay.
Because the DOJ won't answer the question. We put the question to them, they won't answer it.
Okay. Question number 2. When you take your newly registered assault weapon to a range, do you recommend having any sort of evidence that it is registered in case you get harassed?
Yeah, like the letter showing that it's registered, which you're required to have with you all the time.
Oh,
yeah. The best way to do that, is probably to, you know, is to just go ahead and take the full size one and laminate it and keep it in the case with the gun. Okay, this way you keep the oil and grit off of it, and you've always got something to show. All right, and if you're stopped on the way to the range or from the range, and the officer asks you what's in the case, what's your response? Thank you.
Get off my doorstep.
All right, Nikki.
Yeah, this is more kind of a statement of what you're saying as far as outreach, as far as demographics. Is that my crew down in West Hollywood got on CBS News down in Los Angeles, and we actually got a relatively pro-gun story of CBS News on the evening news.
Yeah, by the way, everybody, Nikki is a television star, and I'm pretty sure that his star on the Walk of Fame is going to go right next to Donald Trump's here.
Guys, the issue is that our demographic for pink pistols is not the typical demographic, and if we can reach out, you know, Prop 63 is going to give us something that we never could have gotten. It's going to give us a demographic who voted for the bill and who didn't. So if we, not just here, but across the state, do outreach, we reach out to the people who voted against us, educate, it's hard work, but it's going to be a ground game. But I honestly believe if we step up, we do the fight, we use the same model that the gay community used on marriage equality, we can turn things around. I'm going to be an optimist. I believe we can do it.
Well, all the special snowflakes who are out there protesting against Trump's presidency, who think that they're going to end up in concentration camps, those are the people you're going to want to take to the range. Take them to say, hey, you want to learn what this is about? Come on. Come down to the range. Oh, first you have to pass a background check first. And I can't lend you a gun while we're there. Okay? And I can't let you use my bullets because I'm limited. But otherwise, I'm happy to take you to the range to learn how to shoot. Yes, sir.
You may have answered the question already, but at one time, the bullet button was an alternative registration, and registration had a lot of legal baggage that came with it, like you had to have it in a case, lock case, and like treated like a pistol and all that stuff. And And I presume is that still the case, that registration carries more baggage than potentially the new bullet button?
That's a big 10-4, buddy. Yes.
Would you be willing to serve as a federal judge?
Yeah, in the Northern Marianas or something. Sure. Yes. Yeah, the Northern Mariana Islands. Thank you. Good one, Nick. Good one. All right.
Okay, so we're obviously concerned about replacements and turnover in the Supreme Court. Given how badly screwed we are in the Ninth Circuit, how many are there? 27 of them?
Yeah.
Are they also not appointed by the president?
Yes.
How many of them are due for retirement?
There are 101 vacancies in the federal courts as we speak today. The likelihood of any of them, some of them have pending nominations. The likelihood of any of them getting confirmed between now and when Mr. Trump takes office is pretty close to zero. That means that Mr. Trump will be able to appoint 100 federal judges upon entering office. Not to mention the fact that it's highly likely that there will be 93 new attorney generals throughout the states as well, because they typically resign en masse upon the new president taking office.
But my question was about this district, because we're stuck here. Do you know of any turnovers that are due or pending?
Off the top of my head, no, I don't know any. Yes, sir.
We have Supreme Court justices that are getting very aged.
Ginsburg is 83, Kennedy is 80, Breyer is 78 or something, yeah.
What the probability of getting Supreme Court justice limited to some term? In other words, when you're...
Talk to your friend sitting to at your 7 o'clock or 7:30, because that's going to that would require another constitutional amendment. Because right now, Article 3 says judges serve for life. Now, is it a good idea that they not serve for life? There are arguments on both sides of the equation, and I don't know the exact answer, because I haven't really studied the issue. I tend to think that limiting people's time in government is a good idea, but then the problem with that is, although he said he doesn't want to serve until the day he dies, I would prefer that Justice Thomas stay there until the day he dies. Yes, sir.
I think just last week or the week before, that case up in Oregon involving the Bundys was just concluded.
Yeah.
In which the jury got wind of the fact that there were a large number of federal informants embedded in that operation. They didn't seem to take that too well and voted to acquit.
Yeah.
Any comments on that?
That was described by a lot of people as an instance of jury nullification. And I'm of the opinion that that is a feature, not a bug, of our jury system. I believe that juries should be entitled to sit in judgment of both the law and the facts, with one caveat. And that is, they can sit in judgment of the law and the facts if the law is what we call, I just called somebody earlier an asshole for using Latin, but I'm going to use Latin now. But we classify crimes in the legal world as malum prohibitum and malum in se, which means, is it wrong because it's wrong, or is it wrong because the legislature said it's wrong? Malum in se crimes are crimes like arson, rape, murder, assault, that sort of thing. It's wrong, probably because it's also one of the 10 Commandments or something. It's a common law crime. All right? Fraud usually makes the list as well. But a regulatory crime, like, I didn't leave a national park when, the ranger told me to or something, although technically a trespass. Juries should have the power to nullify stuff like that, okay? Classic case would be, hey, my gun holds 12 bullets instead of 11, or 11 bullets instead of 10. The fuck are you going to put this guy in jail for because his gun holds one more bullet? Not guilty. Get out of here. Yeah, he was. The facts are his gun held 11 bullets. So what? Not guilty. I think juries should be allowed to do that. As far as the case itself, look, there are people that you can talk to in this room who are very familiar with how the federal government prosecutes crimes and investigates crimes. Okay? It is my opinion, and based on experience, that the federal government uses informants and undercover agents and all that kind of cloak and dagger crap a lot more than the state government does. Okay, so that's why you need to watch yourself out there. Okay, know who you're shooting with, and no more postings of your guns on the fucking internet. I saw this last week. Some guy, oh, I got this gun, and gee, this magazine. The guy's publishing a picture of a standard capacity, albeit 20-round magazine, and it's on the internet. It's there forever. Okay. Now, will that be enough for probable cause to get a search warrant? I don't know. I don't know what other facts there might be. But if you give the government one more brick in the wall to convict you, it's your own damn fault if you're publishing your shit on the internet, okay? If you want to put pictures of you enjoying the shooting sports on the internet, stick to the cowboy action stuff, okay? You can't, at least for now, you can't get in trouble with those. All right? Yes, sir.
I was asked a question recently that I couldn't answer. I was talking about new gun laws coming in.
I'm often at that experiencing the same thing.
Standard capacity magazines, if you render them to 10 round yourself with rivets, welding, some way where it cannot be readily disassembled and converted, will that be legal?
Honestly, don't know. I can tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to have magazines that can't physically hold more than 10 rounds. Okay? Literally, and preferably ones that are designed that way, straight up. It's just not, but I'm in a different position than you because, Kamala Harris or Mr. Rosen from the local district attorney's office would love to have me on the defendant's side of a V on a case. So I have to be extra careful. Okay? I don't want to fly rubber dog shit out of Hong Kong.
You can get followed sometimes.
Yeah. All right, well, if that's going to be the end of the questions, I'm going to turn this back over to El Presidente.